Running Sentences presents The Long Road to Get Home, Part 2. A Town of Mystery. Safety is a great thing, as our little group called Venture reaches town, only to discover that things are not quite nice here, and everything is very off. This story is written and narrated by Michael Hunray. It is a work of fiction, so any names, characters, businesses, events, and situations within this story are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real people, situations, characters, businesses, events, etc., and fictional businesses, characters, events is purely coincidental. Copyright 2024, Michael Hunray, all rights reserved. The sight of a town, a small shanty-like place, was a welcomed sight that none of them quite believed. In the lead, Barn slowed a few steps to make sure that the place in their sights was alive and had people. "What's wrong?" "I don't see anybody or any creatures down there. We may be going into a ghost town, which would, not stop those creatures following us," Barn added. "Great, from action to action, and my spells are already running low for the day. We can rest once we're sure that the cats are gone. We just need to get in town and we can rest, right?" "How long is it going to take?" Eerie asked as she pointed towards the town. "Which, the cats or the rest?" "Calico's Langer, who may decide to wait for us to leave town." "Silence, Langer, and Eerie. We'll find someone in town to help us out if there's somebody there. It just doesn't look alive right now." Their slowed run took them straight to the edge of this town via a small, barely discernible road. The streets to this place were one long one divided into two at the beginning of this town, which seemed to circle back onto it as it exited the town. They could clearly see all the way across to the other side in the woods beyond, thanks to the town green where locals once might have collected. Thankfully, now that they were here, they could see there was a few people actually milling about, mostly of a dark red blood look, and skin that just looked off as it glowed this reddish hue. And it also probably staked them as half demons. Anyone good with these types of creatures, talking to them, working with them? Well, my books didn't say much on them. I've seen them and talked to them, but they don't like me, Eerie was quick to offer. The group's attention shifted from Caddy to Eerie, and then to Keith. "I dealt with one way back, but I don't remember how it went." Langer merely shrugged, and Barn followed suit as they watched a womanly figure come out of a nearby building. She noted them and began heading straight for them. "Are you seeking help?" They stared for a moment at the lady, with her sweeping horns that followed her hair. Her red skin is sparkling in spots, and her sultry pace was much faster than any of them anticipated. As she now stood before them, looking over the wounds and the state of exhaustion in front of her. "Did the calicos catch your tongue, or do you just not understand me?" "We can hear you fine." "Good to hear, miss. What brings you here, then? Rest before you begin running again away from those creatures?" "Yes. Do you know of any place where we can rest for an hour or so?" The lady pointed towards the building that she'd just come from, a wooden structure that didn't look like it wanted to stay up straight with the way it was leaning. There was a sign above the door, in faint writing, that said Tavern Inn. "They will let you rest." "Who are you, by the way?" She looked over sharply at Langer with a displeased air about her, and Eerie, as a result, stepped in front of her to stare down at her. "My name is Claudia Gloom, and you need my help, by all appearances." "And why would you say that, miss?" Well, I can heal your wounds, and I know a way out to the woods without raising the suspicion of those cats that were chasing you." The party perked up at that news, though there was a heavy distrust in the air in regards to Claudia. She had readily volunteered this, and so far in this strange land, that wasn't something they found that they could trust. "Well, Miss Claudia, my name is Eerie Snark, and we make up the adventuring band of Ventured. As you may have guessed, we're on a mission to retrieve something." "Oh, good for you. Did you get it?" "We may have it in our possession, but it is of no concern to you." "Well, yes, mister. It could be of no concern, or it could be a lot of concern for me. Depends on what you grabbed and got, and if you're seeking my help." "So you want to join us, then?" There was the smirk of a grin on Claudia's face as she began directing them towards the building, despite their reservations. "Well, however did you guess that?" "It doesn't take much to figure it out." Claudia smiled towards Caddy as the group slowly began to move to the structure, though still eyeing it as if it were about to fall over. Keith had gone over to her with a stern distrust in his eyes. "Why do you want to join us? Is there something wrong here?" The smile was turned on him, which made him take a step back. "Again, such a perceptive group. It's good to see, since this is cursed both outside and inside." "But you're about to heal us and help us if we help you. If there is a curse, won't it stop you from doing any of that?" "Well, no, not exactly, but it is best to talk about such things inside, if you don't mind. We don't want the wrong creatures to hear us." Unable to help themselves, Ventured looked about to see what was wrong with this town. But other than rather plain old-looking buildings of a village, with nothing really going on and a few people moving here and there, they couldn't spot anything. Inside the building was small and dusty, and it was a greeting room which they barely got to see as they were herded into a common room. Here things weren't much better, but there was a bar and a fire going, along with a bartender who was near a pot of some food that smelled slightly good. At least the group hoped that's what was in it. The smell seemed to indicate that it was food, but with their trust low and unsure of everything, they didn't want to get too close or say anything yet. "Peter, a round of drinks, if you don't mind. You have guessed." The worker looked from the pot to the group, then to Claudia, and nodded. "Captured some lost souls, have you?" "No, they came in of their own accord." "Well, that isn't good." The barkeep moved behind the bar and began fixing up some drinks. "Now, as to a quick rundown for this town, it is in fact cursed. No one can leave without some sort of sacrifice being made, or there may be a way to sneak out, but it's not easy." Okay, but what kind of thing would we be sacrificing?" Well, mister, first I would have to ask you to introduce yourselves to me. I need to know that I can trust you so that we can trust one another. Is that fair?" The group of adventurers spent a few minutes silently looking to one another, a few nods yes between them, before the whole group finally gave their names. "Now, what's this sacrifice?" "It isn't a simple thing to get, but you must find a way to give the guardian of the town what it wants." "And no one knows what it wants?" "Well, no, Miss Eerie. It changes every time you go before the guardian. If you guess wrong, well, it's not good." The bartender had come over to the table with a round of drinks and a few plates of food. "It's different from everyone, and it changes. I've tried 3 times and had 3 different answers rejected." "And do we simply walk up to this creature, or that is keeping you here, or what do we do?" The bartender and Claudia shared a hard look, with both shaking their heads no. Before you do answer that, you did mention something about healing. If you could be so kind. That's right, I did. In a swift motion, she stepped over to Caddy and pressed her hand against the still stinging wounds. A green-blue glow came off, and a moment later the wounds began to heal, and then she moved over to Eerie and Langer as she spoke. There is a dungeon you must go to, and to solve the puzzles within to get to the creature, or if the creature decides, he might come to you. Changes every time. Good, let's do that and get it over with. Sounds like there's no problem failing, so... As our dwarf later says, let's get this over with. Well, where does it begin? She grimaced in response once she was done healing and waved her hand about the room. Welcome to the first section of it. Depending on how you do there, it can be more or less sections, or things can change. This is our course, so don't think that it's going to be some easy thing. I'm stuck here helping out those that come to town, as is Claudia. This still doesn't sound all that bad. No, Barn, it is horrible. The nights that you do get a decent sleep are filled with nightmares, and those that repeatedly try to get away and out of this town become walking husks of themselves after a while. There was some apprehension of Unventured's part, but they all knew it was too late to stop now. They'd just entered a fight, and they weren't exactly the types to back down now. What's this creature even like? It's different for everyone who sees it, Miss Caddy. At first, it might be a small blob of a thing, and then it is whatever it wants to be. And now you're all healed and rested up, so are you ready to go? You're going with them, Claudia? Well, I can't stay here, Peter. It's not good for the soul and mind. You could come with us. The bartender was back behind their bar, tending to things, and seemed to be considering this offer. That's a lot of people to be keeping track of. Well, Mr. Keith, he's helpful for getting out of spots. Trust me. We already have a person, actually 2 of them, capable of getting into tight spots and sometimes getting out of them. Eerie pointed her thumb towards Langer, and then towards Caddy, as Langer was trying to get up to say that they were ready to go. If escape really is that hard, it's probably better to have a few people who know the way. The puzzles always change. We've said this, gentlemen and ladies. We might know some of the area, we might not. But I guess having someone who's seen it might not be that bad. Barn had gotten up and gone over to the bar where Peter stood cleaning some glasses. Do you want to get out of here? It's been my dream for a while now, sir. Right, it's settled then. Peter will join us. Shall we go? The bartender then moved over to the center of the room, pushing aside a small rug that covered it. It revealed a trapdoor leading down below, which was then yanked open by the bartender, and one by one they rose and headed to it, and then down into the space. The narrow area of a tunnel greeted them once they were all down. It was lit by a few lanterns that were strung up above the ceiling to this place, which they could see extending quite a ways in front of them. Do we just follow this tunnel, then? Yes, Mr. Keith, it's the only way to go this time around. I'm sure something else will pop up soon enough to lead us somewhere else. Nods came from the group, who, with Peter in the lead, after a bit of shuffling about to get him there, set off. It quickly became apparent that the space wasn't never-ending as it had appeared a few minutes earlier, as they now found themselves facing a wall that ended at this tunnel. From there it split into 2 rooms that went either right or left. Peter turned back to them, and as he was a regular human, pointed towards either direction. A choice to be made. Which way do you want to go, or do you want to split the group up? We never split up. At least we try not to. That isn't true, Barn. We split up to fight Calicos. Yes, and well, we learned a lesson from that, since it led us here. Don't split up unless we have to. Which direction should we go? Peter or Claudia, which way would you go? Well, I've never seen this version of the maze, so it's a mystery to me. I have seen some stuff like this, and I always went right. And so it led you to a monster? Yes, Mr. Keith, yes, eventually. The group huddled together as best they could in the hallway, which was not enough room for them to do so, and then they moved about to get a peek into the rooms themselves. They were identical spaces from what could be seen. A table and chairs in some sort of sitting room with a dirt floor. Well, I said we go left then. Why, Langer? Well, we wanted to get to there faster, and the way Peter has gone, it might have taken up more time if you want to clarify on that. Well, yeah, usually it takes a couple of hours to get through this into the boss. We follow my directions, but again, said it 1,000,000 times, gonna say it 1,000,000 times more, since you don't listen, things change. But he was also nodding along that this was the case, and so the group went into the left room with a bit of apprehension. Piling into this space, they took a glance around. It hadn't changed from what they saw outside of it. A square space with a table in the center, with chairs for 4 people. There was, however, one little thing that they hadn't noticed before. A map of some sort, sitting right in the center of the table. So this place has puzzles. What do we do here to figure those puzzles out? Well, the map... Claudia pointed towards it as she'd gone over to the table and was studying it as she said this. Points us towards rooms. Would that map potentially be a trap? Looking up at Caddy, Claudia nodded yes. Good, and welcome to your test. Do you wish for fast or slow? Who are you, voice, strange voice of whose body we cannot see? The whole group was in fact looking for the speaker of this voice, but all they could see were 4 walls of this room. The door in and out had even vanished. I am the one who you seek if you want to get out of here. Now shall we go quickly or slowly? None of ventured wanted to speak up for the moment, or speak for any of their associates. A glance between one another gave them no real signs of which way anyone wanted to take it. I'm waiting. The longer you take, the more ways I have to keep you here, and that isn't what you want, is it? Make it quick, then. We don't have time to be wasting here in your stupid trap. Come out and face us. There were no complaints from any of the others until they looked up at the ceiling. What had been a solid-looking wood-framed thing was now dripping a goo-like substance towards the ground and all around them. I don't want to complain, but that isn't normal, right? The first thing, creature, beast is usually a goo one, Miss Erie. Then shouldn't we be trying to avoid getting touched by it? I feel like we should be avoiding that. It was too late, even as Caddy said this, as the goo turned into a downpour, falling all over them. It slid off, falling to the ground, these little globs, then skittering off towards the center of the room, up onto the table, and then began gathering around, forming a creature whose weight began to buckle this table. Is this part of the test we have to escape, right? Maybe, Mr. Barn. The times I've tried it, it was a memorization test and a strength test, but not a blob. You ran across a blob, Peter? The table was now cracking heavily under the weight of the goo that was collecting. It split and shattered as the shape of a massive knight took form. No, I didn't have to fight a goo thing. I did have a puzzle involving a creature that looked like... not like this, actually, no. Well, no choice now. We chose our path. Weapons up. No time to plot or plan. A flurry of arrows flew from Caddy's bow that would smack into the shape, slowing but flying through after a moment. It seemed to make no real impact on this knight, who was neon greenish, sort of see-through thing, who had managed to raise the great sword made out of the same material it was, and then swung it towards Langer. He dodged to the right side, away from where the blade was splashed down. Unfortunately, it literally splashed all over the place, deforming from the hit and sending out these goblets of goo all over the place. A few managed to hit Langer, hissing and spitting as they did, sending him to the ground. Ow! It didn't hit you, though. The droplets did. Eerie. My body doesn't feel like it wants to move. She rushed over to him to try and help him stand up and get up as Barnes rushed forward, slashing away at the knight with his rapier to try and distract it. The blade was cutting through, but once again the impacts seemed to have negligible damage. What do you think you're doing, dwarf? Striking at you. The great sword is reforming, and so it was now turned onto Barnes, who watches for a moment as it swung towards him. Heeding what Langer had said, Barnes, instead of dodging, just turned and ran as fast as his little legs would go, not terribly far away, and he could hear the splash of this goo hitting the ground somewhere behind him. He ducked as best he could to try and avoid getting hit by any of those globlets. Well, if physical attacks don't work, how would you like a little magic? A red ball shot from Keith's hand and arched its way towards the creature. It would splash in, absorbed by the goo for a second, before going off in a flame that made the knight bubble up in spots. From its mouth, it burped out smoke after a moment, with its attention turning towards the wizard Keith, who tried to melt away unseen when his attack didn't seem to do much. There was nowhere to hide. Someone do something before it attacks me, please? Having helped Langer get up, Eerie grabbed her axe off of her back and chucked it at the creature. She figured it wouldn't help, but it would do something. And true to that, it hit the Jill goo and went right through, continuing on its path and bedding on the wall behind the creature some few feet away. With a snarl, this massive knight looked over at her. What, did you think we wouldn't try anything and everything against you? I didn't think you'd waste your time doing the same attack over and over again. Show some originality, won't you? Having snuck around and behind, the bartender Peter jumped up with 2 daggers, one in each hand, striking at the head of this thing. The blades sunk in and stuck for a moment, and fearing being pulled in with them, Peter let go, dropping to the ground. Well, I've done all I can do. Do you have a god you can pray to, Claudia? Why would I pray to my god? Don't you healers usually do that? She sniffed at his statement with a disappointed look on her face, as if she were so simple. Do my looks tell you I regularly talk to God? There was a shrug from the bartender. Can we discuss that later? There is a fight going on. Yes, we can discuss it later, but just for reference, my prayers go to a far better connection. A bright light emanated from her hands, which she held in front of her. It took off, heading towards the creature, who dodged out of the way this time. Its arm, though, caught a bit, as a light singed and teared through it. The spot on the arm blackening as the goo seemed to be unable to rebuild at that spot. What kind of magic did you use? It was a doomed spell of cursed light, Keith. Now, you were the one complaining that we have a fight going on, so shut up. As she was saying this, though, the goo launched itself forward, swinging its great sword towards her. There was no time for her to even react, as a horizontal slash caught her right in her side. The blade deformed as it crushed into her, and it managed to send her flying off to the side and into the nearby wall. A groan escaped before she fell unconscious. "We really need to do something about any and all of this." You group save her. I can distract this thing." Peter's words echoed about the room for a moment. Everyone was still a bit frozen up, trying to keep an eye on the monster, lest it attack them. It was rearing up and looking to make an attack at anyone within its grasp who dare move. That was more of a few of them, and no one wanted to be the next victim of that blade. Peter had pounced, drawing out another hidden dagger that was behind his jacket as he moved to try and strike at the burnt spot of the arm. Having been in the blind spot of the creature, the blade sank in. "Ha-ha! You have a weak spot to aim for now." "Eerie, for now ignore Langer since he's sort of frozen up and not able to really do anything. Let's hit that creature." Rather reticent to do something like that. If Langer were hit, he might go down for the count, and unsure how much health healing spells they had, she took a slow step away. It didn't feel right, so it was only that step. "Caddy, you can hit him, right? We need range attacks since getting close to that sword is bad." "Oh, that I can, darling, but are you willing to actually trust me to do it?" "Oh, I have always trusted you and have with my life many times since our little band has been formed. Why are you questioning it now?" A flurry of arrows were slicing through the air, a few finding their mark in the arm. There was a wild and painful scream as it reeled away, and as the blade was swinging towards Peter, but managed to just miss. Though, even with that just miss, the goo came off of the blade, striking up the bartender and freezing him up any further. "Damn, we're down two sneaky people and can't get any closer. Keith, what have you got?" "I'm doing my job as a temp medic." He'd rushed over to Claudia, pulling out a vial from one of his component pouches, a grey-green, icky-looking thing that would have to do in a pinch. It was opened with a pop, and its contents poured down the woman's throat, with her eyes fluttering to life a few moments later. "Right, now I can concentrate on helping out." He summoned the blue-gray orb with a wave of his hand, and some components he'd grabbed from his pouch. It glowed for a moment before it began to refract some nearby light from a candle. An intense beam erupted from it and towards the monster, who tried to put its still reforming sword in the way of getting blasted. The light, though, cut straight through it, hitting the spot he'd been aiming for. The wounded arm was now beginning to show black as it was spreading across the body. This goo began to separate into fractions of pieces, struggling to really hold its shape together. "Puny creatures, I will devour you all!" With a swing of its arm, it slapped down on the still frozen-up Langer who was nearby, and who was then pulled into this sloppy mess, becoming part of the arm. "Much better, I can feel my strength returning, and now to deal with the rest of you." Its sword swung towards the frozen in place Peter once again, only to be disrupted by a blast of light from Claudia as she clambered to her feet. The spell fizzled short of landing, but caught the monster's attention and caused it to back away. "We have numbers. We have to overwhelm it before it does anything to Langer." "Well, we can't risk getting close, Barn." "There are times when you have to take a chance. Now is one of those times. Eerie, are you with me?" Axe in hand, Eerie was examining the monster carefully as it did likewise to her. Any move by them would be anticipated, especially with two rogues down for the moment. "We don't do coordinated attacks, but it might be our best hope. So, on the count of go?" "Agreed. If those that could attack from a distance do that right about, go! 2 spells crackled in the air, followed by a few flimsy arrows. They hit the creature, who reeled back for a moment, some of its sides beginning to melt as it failed to hold its shape. You think this will help you get out of here, attacking me? There are greater problems that lie ahead for you. You started this, not us, weird creature. Die and let us move on. Also, give us back our robe. Yes, give him back. He shouldn't be in here. But he is mine now. The knight-like shape of goo turned and began running as fast as it could towards a nearby wall. Another blast of magic caught it by the side, but this time it seemed to have little effect on it as it smashed into the wall and vanished, with Langer nowhere to be seen. Shit! Chase after it! Eerie called out. I need to tend towards Peter, came the all-too-quick reply from Claudia. The adventurers, though, were busy studying the wall for clues how to get past it, their hands grabbing at every piece of it while Claudia worked her magic on her friend. A moment later, Peter was freed from the poison that had gotten to him. Miss Claudia, how do we get out of here? I'd never seen this room. There's probably some sort of way. In her frustration and not finding anything, Irene had stopped her search, then decided to back up a few feet as she took a run at the wall, fully expecting to bounce off of it. She lined up perfectly at the spot where she figured the monster had gone through for her run, and then went right at it, bracing herself for the pain. She went right through it. The creature was doing its best to heal as Eerie came through, but the scars and burns were not healing at a quick enough rate. Not one to wait around, she was charging forward with her axe, slicing at the arm that contained Langer in it and the wound. It began separating from the rest of the body. Oh, you fool, don't do that. You're kidnapping my friend and telling me not to attack you when you've been throwing poison and trying to kill us? There was a weird sound of a bloop, followed by more figures, which she figures and hopes were her friends. The creature had backed away as its arm of goo fell off, releasing Langer into a puddle that disappeared and made its way back towards the monster, trying to cling once again to it. I keep the crazes in check. Without me, I'll release strangers stuck in this purgatory out into the world. The people don't deserve to be harassed by these creatures. Eerie contemplated this for a moment as her friends joined her by her side. There was an overwhelming urge to hit this creature with her axe again. She held back for the moment. Well, we don't belong here, and you're keeping us here. Maybe you're crazy as well. Stupid is the fools that fall into my village. This was ignored as a spell flew through the air, followed by arrows, and the smashing of a sword along with an axe against this monster. It was far too much for the creature, who tried to curl away from the onslaught of things happening to it. It was too late, though, as the shape which had once been a knight was now fully melting into just a blob, and soon the drops of goo turned into nothing as they lifelessly fell to the ground. Whatever this monster had been, the beating it had taken to its wound destroyed the remainder of it, and before them a flashy sign for an exit. That was it. They looked to one another, confused for the moment. Yeah, that was way too simple, too easy. Not after what, Claudia and Peter said? Yes, Yuri, yes. She turned her attention to see if those two that she just mentioned were around and see if they might be able to offer an answer. Not seeing them, though, she turned her attention immediately to Langer, who was plopped onto the ground, face first. In a hurried move, she flipped him over and tapped on his face since his eyes were closed. Langer, you still in there? Where did that healer run off to? I think she went to attend to the barkeep, Caddy, and I don't think they followed us in here. Well, waiting for them here when the exit is right there seems like a bad idea. Might be a trap and another boss waiting for us. If we can just get out of here, we should just get out of here. Well, it does, Barn. However, we did say this was far too easy. Langer stirred in her arms, slightly waking up, but not opening his eyes. This shouldn't be complicated. Let's just make it easy. We go. The doorway they'd come through was now clearly visible as Keith wandered over to see if he could see the other two. He took but a moment, but came back, shaking his head now that they weren't around. I don't see him. Well, do you have any potions left? There was a bit of silence to this question from Eerie, as the whole lot of them were busy checking over their gear to see what they had at the moment, and all of them came up empty-handed. Let's get him out of here and see where we wind up. If we're in town, maybe someone has a potion.
Barn points towards the door as he says this.
Caddy helped Eerie grab a hold of the still mostly motionless Langer and began dragging him.
The sign for the exit was still there,
but none of them exactly trusted it. Nope, they were all preparing for the worst as they approached the door. Barn was the first to it and threw it open, while jumping back to make sure that they were all safe. It was empty of any creatures trying to kill them. In fact, it just had a staircase that was going upwards. Up we go, Barn. The only other way we could go was the way we came, and, if I remember correctly, we came down by a ladder, which would make getting Langer out difficult. There were nods all around, as Barn once again took up the lead. He was followed by Eerie and Caddy dragging along Langer, with Keith in the tail end of all of this, a task he really didn't like, since it was either the front of the line or the back of the line that was attacked first. He was just a squishy little mage of a wizard, with not great reaction timing. This was about to be a pain in the ass, should anything happen. The stairs brought them to another door, this one that opened in due course with all of them hurrying out, looking and waiting for the worst to happen to them. There was nothing but trees around them to greet them, no creatures, people, or buildings, and they found themselves in a clearing. The only thing that was around was a sort of door that didn't have a wall or anything around it. They were confused and continued to look around. This looks like a clearing where the town was, right? As far as I can remember, yes, Barn, that is what this looks like. But it isn't here, though, you two. Nothing is here, Keith, absolutely nothing, which makes no sense and is bad. Langer does not look to be doing well. Well, what do you want us to do, Eerie? We can't help him, and the only person who can has vanished. A few feet away, in a nearby wooded area, there was a sort of rustling and growling sound that came from it. Well, we might not have any time to argue any of those points. I think the calicos are still a problem,
Caddy offered with a worried groan.
They took a moment to locate where the sound was coming from, which was kind of far off, but not too far off. They then took in their further surroundings to make sure that they knew what was going on. So, Barn, anyone, which way did we come in and which way are we leaving? None of them offered a comment as they began forming a tight circle around Langer. Well, waiting here seems like a terrible idea. Those cats are sure to be closing in on us. Caddy, you're the map person. We'll give you a quick second to collect yourself, but make it quick and find where we are. It's always up to me, isn't it? She said this, fishing about for the maps in one of her many pouches, finding it in a short amount of time. It was laid out next to Langer, as flat as she could get it, and moved about until she felt it pointed in the right direction. The growls sounded like they were getting closer, but they couldn't see anything, which made her look up and then down again every time they made a noise. Right, since we came in and went underground, when we then moved down a hallway, and then to the left, and then up, We came through those stairs, which means we could be by the other side of this town, I guess. That's what the clearing is. Anyway, there's a lot of woods and a massive river not far from here. She pointed towards the door that they come out of, which should have been there, but when she looked that way to make sure of that, it was also gone. Well, it's over there somewhere. Ignore the fact that I think that the doorway was there that we came through. It's definitely that way we need to go. There was but a moment's hesitation before they all took off in that direction, Eerie and Caddy once again dragging along the hapless Langer. End of part 2 of The Long Road to Get Home. Thank you for listening.